Hey everyone, Aaron here with Elite Watersports, and I'm hanging out in front of the shop with Rienstra. Man, this guy's been a pro for over 20 years, and guess what? We're going to go over some tips and tricks about competitions, the strategies, the formats, and everything he's learned over the years. So stay tuned, and we'll make you that much better out on the water. All right, here we are in front of the shop hanging out with Rienstra, and today's video is all about going over competitions, strategies, everything he's learned with his 20 years of experience. And remember, we're doing this big air tour, the 5 stops around Florida, and there's been a lot of, questions and concerns and just how to perform better. And that's what this video is about. Eric, tell us a little bit about your history and like everywhere that you've come from and all the different world stops and all the different freestyle to big air. I mean, you're well versed. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I've pretty much been around the block, as they say.
Yeah, all right.
I started kiting back in 2002, 2003 after windsurfing my whole life, snowboarding. So
Nice.
had a real affinity for the board and really wanted to start kiting as soon as I saw it. So as soon as I started, just all the skills I had gained over my life just kind of translated directly into it. And
Yeah.
started competing. I think my first contest was the 2005 King of the Bay in San Francisco.
Whoa, yeah,
It was
that's
pretty
cool.
sweet. I was in the amateur, and I got to watch Jesse Richmond and Mark Doyle duel it
Whoa.
out in the pro division.
Nice,
So
nice,
that
man.
was
One
a
of my
great
first
event.
kiteboards was made by Doyle.
Yeah,
Slingshot. Yeah.
exactly. Mark Doyle and his father John Doyle was the board designer there, and
Nice.
I ended up getting sponsored by Slingshot after that event, and
Yeah.
and the rest is history. I've kind of traveled all around the U.S. doing regional events, and I jumped on the world tour for a couple events, and even did a couple seasons of judging for the world tour.
Nice.
And then, I always had an affinity for the park coming from snowboarding, so jumped into the park events and eventually jumped on the world tour for park. So
All right.
still going strong on that. And
So that leads me to why I reached out to you to get some more input on our format for our big air tour around Florida, 5 stops. And my format is kind of combined from like your freestyle experience, your big air experience, along with I also reached out to other pros around the world to come up with what we're doing for that big air. And strategy is huge, and it's not, for some, it's not just about fun. It's also about competition. Some people have that really competitive side like you do, obviously, if you're touring, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I like to go over that with you, man. And like, what are you thinking about and what are you doing like when we go into those competitions?
Yep. So, I mean, competition for me, it's always been, kind of that. I love it because it's not just a regular session,
Right.
like something about being in the contest and having that moment be when you need to go. It just heightens the energy and everything is just amplified. You're around people around you that are amping the energy up, and
they're at your level or higher, and they're just like,
it's just
getting your heartbeat.
Electricity is just
Yes.
gets you going. So I've never had more fun than I've had in contest heats. Those are my favorite sessions.
Likewise.
It almost like forces you into the flow state. The flow state is this, thing where, you just stop thinking and your body takes over, and
Yes.
everything that you've prepared your body to do is it's just doing it without you really thinking too much. So
Heck yeah.
Preparation is a big part of competition. Everyone likes to say training. I don't really like that word.
Right. That's too serious. That's too serious, right? You should still have fun with it.
Well, I find training more to be kind of the physical fitness part of it, whereas like your skills training, I just like to say riding. You ride and you want to have your stuff pretty dialed.
Kiteboarding is all about having fun out in the water and like experiencing the elements, and it's an attraction or almost an addiction to get out there and enjoy what the wind is offering, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's why it's probably not training for you, because you're having a really nice session, but you are geared at some point to like try something new to get that much
Yeah.
better, or
Yeah,
whatnot.
and you know, that's a big part of doing any kind of sport or anything in life is all about progression and learning something new
Yeah.
constantly. If you're not learning something new, you can get bored very quickly. So, I mean, having kited for as long as I have, um, that progression obviously plateaus at some point. And, I actually find a lot of joy in doing, other newer things that I'm a novice at,
Right.
starting with winging, um, and stuff like that. Just being a novice, that progression moves a lot more, and just the fun of learning is
It's
where the most
endless,
fun
right?
is. Yeah. And
So,
yeah.
I'm leading into like that's super inspiring for everybody to kind of get into kiteboarding because of all the different layers and stuff and get into competitions. A lot of people are resistant on getting on the competitions. So let that be words of wisdom that, you may have that competitive side in you, and just try it. Just try a competition and see what happens.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many different formats out there in the world, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you've seen about like sanctioned events and the differences between like seeding and like how does a event like mine that's made basically off of like semi pros to give them that like tier, that next step up, that podium finish to get to that next level of pro stat like you are,
Yeah.
right? Can you tell us a little bit more like what you've learned through the years on that?
Yeah. The amateur level of competition is definitely very important, to get that experience, um, especially now that the sport is kind of developed and events are full. You really need somewhere to start. You can't just show up on the world tour anymore and like be in the event. You have to qualify.
Right.
There's tiers to it now, and the amateur level is definitely where you can gain experience, kind of get over the butterflies of the unknown parts of competition,
Right.
and definitely kind of get your feet wet before you dive in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's
It's
good to
something the
see.
US doesn't really have right now. We're trying to
Yeah,
get that sparked again.
yeah, and definitely, in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of people doing contests, so there really wasn't. You basically had to enter an event, and there was only one category. So, as much fun as that is, you're usually not going to get as much as you said podium finish, which is really how you get, the attention of sponsors and get that support to be able to, afford to go
Right.
on these big trips to go to contests and stuff. Because
Yeah.
you do have to travel a bit because a lot of the higher class contests are outside of the USA. So,
Right.
um,
So, that's why we're doing our event is you call it amateur, which is that's what it is, but we're
yeah,
calling it semi-pro to
semi-pro.
attract what level of riders we have in the state of Florida in comparison to outside of the US. Those levels of riding are at quite high,
Yeah,
And I'm trying to get those beginners to get those butterflies out of there and then be able to get up that podium,
yeah,
at every stop to maybe really stand apart and grab some
yeah,
sponsors, possibly getting maybe some funding or inspiration or whatnot to get to these bigger level
yeah,
rides.
yeah, exactly. And you know, um, pro kind of gets thrown around a little bit, and you're right that even though it's an amateur contest, the riding level is still of a semi-pro level of riding.
Right.
So definitely, even at the amateur level, you're doing pro level riding. So
So that's
it's
cool.
definitely good to see, the level of riding that we've seen in the few events that you've had. Like
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, the the level's only just a tier below, and obviously it's condition based, especially with big air, what you're actually able to do. But when you got people doing mega loop board offs,
Hmm.
you're, I mean, king of the air. You're doing that trick, but maybe with, I guess they're doing 4 rotations or something
Right.
with it.
Well,
But
a couple years ago, a board off mega loop was like next level, the
yeah,
highest level,
exactly. No one was even doing
and we
like
have them
you would
at
have
our
won king of the
stops
air
doing it.
5 years, six
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's talk about strategy, right?
Yeah.
You know, my format is best. So we take 6 tricks. Your max amount is 6 tricks, right?
Yep.
And you're only scored on 3, and the average of the 3. That's how we're basing everything. So when you're going into that kind of format, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So the different kinds of formats, it seems to be breaking down to what you've suggested, which is a limited number of attempts with, a certain amount of those counting, as opposed to a timed heat. And I feel like a lot of our contests, we kind of started that sort of format in the park, mainly because we do have to go one at a time at a feature. And if you're on a time schedule, then it turns into, oh, like someone crashes and is blocking the feature. Now all of a sudden, it's
You can't go. The
you
next
can't
guy
go,
can't
and now the
go.
timing becomes a big factor. And um, as you were alluding to before, with sanctioned events versus just kind of um, regionally thrown events,
Yeah.
it's all about trying to make the contest fair as possible.
Right.
And so by having people kind of go one at a time and not have to worry about blocking or rushing,
Right.
you're just able to give everyone an equal chance to kind of show what they got and not have it come down to other factors that
Right.
affect the event. And
I mean, we do have a time limit of 8 minutes that is
Yeah.
flexible based off yard sales and
Yeah.
crashes if the one person can't can complete.
Yeah.
It's designed in the way of like, you know what, if you're not ready for the heat, you didn't make it
Yeah.
out on the water, we're not extending it because you didn't
Yeah.
get 6 hits.
Yeah.
You know what we're calling a 6.
And as long as they're not
Yeah.
blocking everyone. So
Right,
if
right.
you've got enough space that someone can be down
Yeah.
and it's not blocking or impeding the rest of the heat, then sure, like let the time run out and let the person that crashed and couldn't get back up kind of
Maybe hit.
not finish the heat. Because
Right.
I mean, when I was judging the World Tour, it was timed.
Okay.
And man, if you crashed your kite and it inverted, or if you got eaten by a wave, like they didn't pause the heat. You just lost 5 minutes out of your 8 minutes, like, so that was detrimental. And that's where the strategy comes in, is you don't want to be crashing early in the heat. You want to make sure that, so if you're going to go down, you go down after you've put down a solid score.
So let's talk about that, right? 6 hits. What are you going to do? You're probably going to do your 3 best tricks that you can nail it. I think you call them like safety tricks or something like that.
Yeah, so that's, in a format where you've got limited amount of hits, you kind of got to factor in, okay, how many do I need to land? How many, count? So in your case, you have 3 out of 6. So I would try to put down, you're not going to go for your absolute best trick right away.
Right.
Because unless you can land it, which technically your best trick's going to be less consistent. So start with the tricks that you have that are upper tier but consistent. Make sure you get 3 tricks on the board. And then once you have 3 solid tricks on the board, sure, sell the farm. But you are going to want to look at your competition as well. So if you're going up against someone that is, if you're watching, you do your first trick and you watch and they do their trick and they crash, then okay, I can stay on my pace. I don't need to hurry here.
They have one less
Throw
trick.
my trick. They got one less trick, and you can kind of watch kind of what you need. And that's where this one at a time format really helps, because you can actually kind of watch. Whereas the timed heat, you never really see your competition, and you really just have to be kind of going the whole time. Whereas one at a time, especially if on the World Tour, they're showing you your scores, so you can actually see like what you need. So by the end of the heat, you're kind of like, oh, I'm winning by this. There's no point in even going for a trick that's going to score less than your top 3 tricks.
Right. You could risk even not much like gear failure, like injury of some sorts or whatever, and you've made it through the heat. Your competition hasn't done better than you, or at least what you perceived as. You know, you're not the judge, but you can get a good basis off of that, and save it for the next round.
Situational awareness.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's probably the most important tip and trick of all of our competitions is knowing the heat that you're in. Not just like showing up to the heat, but you can even like you know, Google search the rider prior,
Yeah.
because you know
Oh, yeah.
who's in your heat
It's
before you
like
go out.
football players studying film.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
of course that's what you do, you
Right,
know?
right.
Like if you want to beat someone, you got to know everything they got in their pocket. You don't want to
Yes.
be on your sixth trick and be like, okay, like I'm ahead of him. I'm just going to play it safe. And you didn't know he was going to pull out his best trick in the end.
Yeah.
You know, you got to know what they're capable of.
Man, we had a couple of names come up to the first stop that we have never even heard of ever. They don't have Facebook or Instagram or anything. We're like, who are these guys? And I can tell you this, if I was competing, I would have been watching them first heat, second heat, third heat,
Yeah.
every heat that they competed in to see where I'm matched up and
Yeah.
if I need to worry about them,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool, man. You know, that takes years to acquire, and you know, that's what
Yeah.
this video is all about, is to offer that help and assistance and
Yeah.
inspire people to get out there and compete with us, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
It's the patience, you know, like when you first get in your first contest, you're probably going to go out there, be super antsy and just be trying to huck your best stuff. And
right.
a lot of guys that, you know, probably could have made it into the middle rounds or even towards the end of the event will end up just crashing out in the first round because they
Yeah.
just weren't patient enough and just, um, you know, tried to sell the farm
Yeah.
right off the
Lastly, I
bat.
mean,
So,
the equipment, right? The
yep.
equipment tells everything, the whole story of your whole entire heat, you know, and we allow you to have a caddy on the beach to switch out your kite if it's not
Yeah.
right. As long as that caddy doesn't go in the water, they can have it ready to go. It can be flying and you just pass the chicken loop over. Like, where should somebody put their mindset on what gear they should select?
I mean, that's the age-old question in kiting, right? Like,
Right.
what kite should I take?
Yeah.
So, obviously, you want to be on something you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be experimenting or, you
Like
know,
new gear. Like
yeah,
if you just bought the kite, probably not the best thing
yeah,
to do.
yeah. So, same thing with, you know, trying tricks you've never landed before. You don't really want to, you know, you want to know what your timing is with your kite. You want to, you know, have some experience
Yeah.
and comfort on the gear you're riding. And
I noticed on our first two stops so far, actually, people are gearing because, you know, it's a big air competition, but our
yeah,
format is 20 knots or more. It's Florida, right?
yeah,
20 knots is good, right? But you know what? What makes you a pro is that we had a little heat for you guys, right? And you're out there and it's only 20 or so, right? Every heat before you guys were on nines and tens because it's big air. You went out on a 15 and you're like 25 feet, 30 feet in the air doing triple board off, like
yeah,
awesome stuff, right? That's big air in my eyes.
yeah,
But everybody else stayed on small kites. And right then and there, like they should have known, like they're up at 12 and 15. Don't be afraid. You should be always on that top side, is what I'm kind of getting
yeah.
at.
And that comes down to, you know, knowing the format of the event you're in because kiting's so dynamic that you kind of, you know, we could say big air, but, you know, you kind of have to quiz the judges on what they're looking for. And
Right.
you want to, you know, understand kind of what the judges are looking for.
Sure.
And, you know, guys are on smaller kites, obviously, because they want to do kite loops because that's what they see King of the Air and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
um,
There's a
they're
couple
throwing
riders
those
and,
in
and
30 plus, you know? So
yeah.
coming in with a 9 meter, a little underpowered, and trying to do a kite loop, like I said, you're just going to be, you might be crashing out. So
Right.
the better strategy might be to shift gears and go more into the non-looped big air when the conditions don't call for it. And yeah, just, you know,
Of course.
knowing whether the judges are going to reward that or not is obviously
Of
the
course, like
most
Red
important part of
Bull
that
is at like
strategy.
a way different level, right?
Yeah.
And mega loops are definitely scored at being extreme and stuff. But there was a couple guys that were scoring really great points for just a normal big air,
Yeah.
board off, multiple rotations, and then like a down loop of some sort or
Yeah.
heli loop, you
Yeah.
know? And, you know, judging on our format, you know, is the
Yeah.
same way. Like, go
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
go bigger, go more powered is going to score you higher.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Just got to know your format and know your judges. So,
well, we've covered a lot in this video, and I hope you guys stay tuned for the whole entire thing. There's a lot of tidbits and a lot of info you guys can actually acquire from pro riders that are on the beach. You know, all these guys in kiteboarding are super stoked just to talk shop, talk tricks, tips, all that stuff. They're passionately driven. So, you know, if you see a guy like Eric on the beach, don't be afraid to go up and, you know, pick his brain a little bit and just, you know, give him some praise for keeping this sport alive, you know, and keeping these competitions going. And they're always contributing back, just like you guys are. So thank you, Eric. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you out on the water.
So yeah, thanks guys.
All right, I'll catch you later. See ya.